Hey everybody, this is my Gourami tank, and today I need to get in here and do a lot of maintenance on it. I need to get in and do a water change, I need to get the filter cleaned out, and most importantly I need to get over here on the right and remove a lot of this Red Tiger Lotus. If you can see these strands that are all sort of wavy looking, these are the runners that have gone up to the surface and are now floating in true lily pad sense. Well, perhaps not the pads themselves that seem to have the lip on them, but these are definitely the leaves that are the surface leaves. And while it is a beautiful, beautiful, stunning plant, I just can't have the whole entire surface of my tank covered by lotus leaves. So I've said many times over the years that you should try to cut those runners back before they get to the surface, or else the plant will begin vigorously growing towards the surface. I always say that effectively once the plants discover the surface, they shoot for it, you know? I've always said that because I've always understood that. I've been told that by several people. I know how plants work a little bit, and that's always made sense to me, but I've never had any kind of practical experience with that. So lately, a combination of nice weather and being outside a lot, and just a little bit of curiosity to see what this is going to look like if I let it go a little bit, I've let it go a little bit. And we've got plenty of surface leaves now. We've got lots of those runners, and it really does seem like it's just starting to send runners up as opposed to larger leaves now. So I'm going to be getting in there and cleaning a lot of that out, opening the tank back up, exposing a lot of light back into the tank. I also have to get over on this side, and once again the green cyanobacteria is starting to build back up. You can kind of see the mats of it right there, that really dark green looking stuff. So I'll have to get in there and thin that out. It'll come back eventually, but for now I'll get in there and reduce it a little bit. You can see one of my gouramis back there. I also have sad news for this tank. I don't see her at the moment, but I noticed the other day that my Gold Gourami was in there and she was acting unusual. She was sitting at the surface like a cork. The next day I noticed the same thing, and when I went over to investigate, if I get close enough to her to sort of startle her, she tries to swim away, and it's it's almost uncomfortably obvious that she cannot get down into the water column at all. She literally is floating like a cork. So I think she too has swim bladder issues. I just lost my opaline gourami out of this tank a couple of weeks ago due to swim bladder issues. She went the other direction. She kept sinking, and she would have to swim constantly to stay up in the water or lie on one of the leaves or lie on the bottom. The Gold Gourami, however, is buoyant. It cannot get down into the water. So I do plan on shooting a video here in the near future. I was going to talk about bloat a little bit and talk about some of the issues that I had with the fish in this tank. One of the fish in this tank also got fairly bloated up at the same time my other gourami was having the swim bladder issues. So I definitely want to talk about some of these conditions these fish suffer from. As far as what's going on in this tank, I don't think it's anything actually going on in the tank. I don't think the bloat condition I saw in the Moonlight Gourami was anything of concern. It went away over a couple of days, so I suspect it might have been some sort of false pregnancy or gravidity. I don't know what you would call it. These aren't live bearers, so they don't technically get pregnant. They're egg layers, so they would become gravid rather than pregnant. But at any rate, whatever you want to call it, I think that's what happened. And then within a few days, she was back to normal, and everything was fine. Hell, she might have been constipated and everything got cleared out, and now she's fine that way too. Whatever that issue was, I don't think that was something problematic with the tank necessarily. The two gouramis both experiencing swim bladder issues does seem a little coincidental. But I also just looked this morning, and oddly enough, 4 years is pretty much the lifespan of these gouramis, and they are about 4 years old in this tank. So maybe they're just getting old, and like old people, they're just starting to have issues with their internal organs, and their bodies aren't working the way they used to when they were youngins, and it could be as simple as that. I don't know. I'm going to put my head on it a little bit and kind of think about what's going on in this tank and whether or not the swim bladder issues might be attributed to something else. But it just seems a little too specific for those two fish. I got them at the same time. They're about the same age, and they both are sort of expiring at the same time. I really don't expect her to recover from this condition. She may live with the condition, but I don't expect it to get any better. Again, with her being buoyant, it's a little distressing to watch her, but as long as she can still feed and get to the surface, she's not necessarily doomed to die because she has a swim bladder infection, you know. In nature she might be, because she wouldn't be able to escape predators or whatever. She'd just sort of be stuck at the surface. But in this environment, you know, being stuck at the surface isn't anything that's going to cause her any harm. Now, if she's got some sort of bacterial infection or some medical issue that's actually causing, or physiological issue that's causing the swim bladder issues, now, you know, that may wind up killing her. But I don't think the swim bladder issue itself, the fact that she's going to be on the surface of the water, will be any kind of you know, death sentence in its own right. To point that out, a case in point is this tank here, my 29. It finally died. I finally lost it. But if you see these blue glowfish, these skirt tetras that have been genetically modified, I had one of them in this tank that lived with a bad swim bladder for about 3 years. Had to constantly swim. It never, you know, it didn't just sit in the water column the way these do. It constantly was, you could tell it was constantly swimming to stay afloat. If it stopped, it would sink like a, well, it wouldn't sink like a stone, but it would sink pretty quickly. And that one lived for 3 years like that. So that was one that would actually sink and, you know, had trouble, had to just constantly move and constantly swim, which I always wondered how it could do that without just utterly exhausting itself and dying. How can you constantly move like that? But it did it for years. So the idea, there she is. The idea that her, who can literally just sit there and float and look like she's sleeping, I've actually a couple times now I've thought she died. And I went in because she was lying sort of askew, kind of half on her side. And when I went in and, you know, got closer to her, she got startled and tried to swim away. And again, it was pretty clear. I mean, look how high out of the water she's sitting. Her back is up out of the water. Not just her dorsal fin, her entire back. So now that I'm realizing she actually is exposed above the water, I suppose that could cause some issues for a fish. Her scales drying out or being exposed to the bright lights or the warmer temperatures above the water. Not really sure if that's going to cause issues or not. It'll be interesting to find out, I guess. But unfortunately, there's not a lot I can do. You know, without really knowing what's going on, my only options would be to just start randomly medicating the tank in hopes that I get whatever may or may not be causing it. Again, it could be simply old age. Well, anyway, I will talk about all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get into all the, you know, details of that kind of stuff. I did just want to shoot this little video and talk about that because I noticed it definitively last night, but it was a little too late to start shooting video about it. At any rate, make sure you're subscribed. I will be doing updates on her condition. I will probably be doing a simple before and after video of my water change on this tank if I can get to it today. And then, of course, I got a lot of other stuff going on down here, and you don't want to miss any of that either. So this is my Gourami tank. Don't forget, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks again for watching this one. I'll see you real soon in the next one.